Welcome back to Embracing New Life. We want to thank you for joining us. And on this week's episode, we're diving into part 3 of our interview with AJ Schreier. If you have not seen or listened to part 1 or 2, we encourage you to go back and listen or watch those and then come back and join us here for part 3. But if you have been along for the ride, then we'll dive into part 3 here without any further ado. So thanks for joining us. Thanks for being with us. And here we go into part 3 of our interview with AJ Schreier.
I'll share with people at times. There are very often many ways it could go well.
For sure.
But none of them are going to be problem-free.
Yeah. I don't want people to think like it just ends there with this decision.
Yes.
Like even if you go back to the jail one, if you leave someone in jail, it doesn't just end there. If you bail them out, it doesn't just end there.
Right.
Like that's where I don't want people
Right.
to think it's a simple to do or not to do.
Yeah.
And that solves everything. But part of it is like helping to play this out. Like what happens here? What follows along with this? Like this isn't is this a big decision? It is a big decision, but also it's not one that just closes the door and ends things. Like it's it leads to that's going to end as soon as you make that decision. It's for sure. It's going to start to have the implications.
Yeah. And then the next. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So to me, it's not about trying to be able to make the right decisions for people. Because I don't even want to say I know that.
Yeah.
I don't want to say that. But part of it is how can I help the person to think of their choices, look at their decisions. What resources do they need? Hey, what's it going to be like when you get that call? How are you going to manage that? How do you anticipate that would be for you? You know, and then trying to help them. How would you cope with that? How would you deal with that? I'm not just helping them with that one issue is not really what, to me, counseling is a part of. But it's a bigger part of overall helping them to improve on some things like thinking things through, decision making, and coping with things beyond just this situation.
Well, and in that, you're moving people towards agency, right? So you're helping them see that they're an active participant in their narrative, you know. And I think along with that, I think part of the education piece is helping them to also understand that there's a lot of just conditioning psychologically that they've encountered from the point that they were born to now that is fighting against, you know, new behaviors being established. And so to the point earlier, it just takes an incredible amount of time and energy for behavioral for behaviors to change, you know. So encouraging them, yes, you do have agency in your story and you can make choices, but also encouraging them that it's going to take a lot of work just because your brain has a way it likes to operate. And a lot of that a lot of that processing is in the subconscious, and you have very limited access to the way it operates. So with time and intentional effort, you can move towards, you know, better decision making. But yeah, agency is just so foundational to people owning their stories and living well. You know?
Which is why I love being able to work in places where you can work with people for a long time.
Yeah.
You know, I've been fortunate where, you know, like here at New Life Resources and some of the other places where I've been able to work with people for years. I mean, I've known some clients and individuals for a long time. I've been restricted in some settings to, you got 30 days.
Wow.
Yeah.
You got 60 to maybe 90. You know, maybe we'll give you 90. And that's hard as a counselor because you can definitely tell like your ability shifts with that sort of limit. And there are times where would I have liked to have done a different style or approach? Hands down. I'll admit that. Did I think that would have been the best? But also I can't apply that when I only have 30, 60, 90 days.
Arbitrary numbers, but given any specific case.
Yeah, because if I only got someone for 30 days, I probably have to get into a little bit more solution focused. I probably have to get into more of what's going on from like that human services case manager of like, you know, where they're going to go, where they're going to live, how they're, you know, what they're going to do with like work. Like that is a much different approach than here when I sometimes have had someone for a long time. Like that allows so much to occur when you get years to work with someone.
Yeah. And what I've observed in addiction treatment is the needs, the basic human needs we all have. When those needs are being met in a healthy way, they can much more effectively manage whatever the addictive process has been. But when those needs aren't met, as you were describing earlier, it's real probable we're going to have lapses or relapses even, because that's the strategy they've known to try to meet those needs. The needs don't go away just because we say, oh, this isn't a healthy thing to do. The needs are real.
Yeah, it's one of the other quotes about the behaviors. One of the negative behavior is a function of my unmet need.
Yes.
And you also have the word negative in it, but it goes to show that there is something that's they're not getting. And that's where I think a lot of the part of what I like to hear with like some students and younger clinicians is they bring up, you know, Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And I think sometimes we forget about some of that stuff where people, this happens a lot with substance use, is people will look at like, if you just stop the substance use, everything will be taken care of.
Yeah.
You just stop that. And remember, assuming positive intentions, it's coming from a place of there's desperation going on and people are just hoping the tornado goes away. But when the tornado goes away, I say there's a lot of disaster caused. And let's also be clear, I don't think it's just the one person. You got family dynamics going on, you got relationship dynamics going on that, you know, I sometimes ask families, okay, if this behavior was gone today, everything is good? and you know they sometimes they try to hide it. They try to be like, yeah, it'd be great, but you know there's always other things going on. And we see that too. People who do, if their goal is abstinence and they do get abstinence, they do maintain sobriety, everything isn't just better.
No.
Things are a lot harder. Because now it's not that I have money issues, but now I have money issues being sober. Feeling all the feelings that I haven't felt. And like I always tell people there's no gold card of sobriety that you can just, you know, cash in with problems to be like, well, I thought I just needed to get sober and everything was going to be okay. Yeah. People still have problems, issues, finances.
Yeah.
And people look at this too when it comes to if they would just stop, everything would be better. It's hard to say that to someone who doesn't have a home right now. Like, okay, we'll stop using, and then where's the home? Where's the house? Sometimes people who don't have a house are using just to get through being on the street. So just to say to someone, if you take care of that, and that's why there's a lot of things that come with the more, you know, housing, food, you know, taking care of basic rights should be the first step that we take before we try to enact all this change. That we don't put sobriety and abstinence as a gatekeeper to these things. That we don't say, hey, once you get sober, now you can do this. It's, you know, you realize maybe if this person had food, had a place to live, that there's probably a better chance they could get sober, or they could reduce their use, or they could maybe have less effects. But that's not always agreed upon. There's not just like treatment wise, but society wise
as well. Yeah,
there's a disagreement on what people think should come first. And part of me, I struggle with not seeing, like, if someone's basic human needs are not being met, I don't know how we would expect some of these really grand changes that are difficult for people who, by the way, do have those things. I mean, I don't work with people who just struggle with finances, or I have people who have plenty of finances, who have a roof over their head, who have a job. They still struggle with addiction issues. So having that is no guarantee. But also, like, it's really hard for someone like they're in survival mode. You know, they're just trying to get through how do you work on transformation? We're just trying to get through day by day. We see that in trauma. We see that in substance use, where when someone's stuck in that, they can't, it's hard to even think past this next hour, this next night.
Yep.
And to that point, I remember watching a TED Talk. It's been many years now, but I think the guy was talking about how Portugal, I believe it was Portugal, was doing their people that had been incarcerated for drug-related issues, how they were doing it when they got out. They were connecting them with communities and a job right away, and they found greater success because people were supported, they felt valued, they had purpose in life. You know, and so, as you say, to be able to meet those basic needs and then also come alongside them and help them meet the needs that are so deeply human, to know and be known and to love and be loved and to connect with others, it has a powerful impact on people.
Yeah. And there's some programs like that in Milwaukee. One Partners at Hope with Community Warehouse, where upon release from incarceration in a community, job training, providing them with clothes for an interview. But something even that simple can really make a difference, because if our needs aren't met, we're going to have to find some way to tolerate that pain.
Yeah, we have at Community Medical Services, where I am a clinical director. We have a program that works with individuals incarcerated and released. A lot about that. But here's the thing that stands out about that is they started getting them some backpacks filled with like basic toiletries.
Yeah.
Because sometimes these individuals get out at 1 a.m, 2 a.m. Like the release times are scary because what's open at the time, but also they're just getting out. They have nothing. One of my coworkers and friends said it best was how bad would it be is if this person gets locked up again because they stole deodorant or a toothbrush from a place just because they don't have toiletries. So like part of that was getting a backpack made with like some basic toiletries and things that they could start with, because we don't want that's what someone's going to get locked up again for. Things that we take for granted is to someone could be a difference maker in
for sure,
you know, not going back.
Let me change focus just a moment here.
For sure.
So it's a common question I am asked is, I've got a loved one who's in an addictive process, whatever the object of the addiction is. What should I do?
One of my questions that I ask a lot more now than I used to was, are you getting any kind of counseling or help? Because I really, in New Life, I have to say New Life helped me with that, because a lot of the places that I've worked, my main individual that I was providing care for was the person struggling with substance use. You know, I worked in, you know, group home, halfway house, residential, where that's the person. Now I worked with families because families were a part of it, and they would come. But it wasn't until working with New Life that I begin to experience working. If that person's not going to come get help, who then shows up to see me? And that's the family member. So I'm not even working with the person, but now it's the family member who's saying, hey, my husband won't stop drinking, or my son won't stop using. They don't want to come to counseling, but I'm here. And now they're not my client. The person who is using a substance or engaging in behavior is not mine, and now it's the family member that is my client. This is where I really loved, you know, family systems work and marriage and family therapy, you know, and looking at this from a systems perspective versus just this one client that I'm working with. So part of me always asks, you know, like what kind of help are you getting for this going on? And they sometimes think that that's why they're here to see me, is so that I can help them to fix the other. So they think I'm going to come up with some amazing, like, this is how you stop it, this is how you get rid of it. But like I kind of be transparent from the beginning that like if you're here, and no, even if a couple were here or a family were here, I'm not here to fix anyone. Like I'm going to make that clear. I'm not here to fix this. I laugh sometimes when someone comes in and they'll say this. They'll be like, this person, they're an addict. They can't stop using, and we're all here today to support this, and whatever we can do by today to take care of this, let us know. Like they're thinking I'm going to get this done in one session.
About a day. No problem.
With everything, but I really started working with families to try to help understand that they have been impacted. They have been a part of it in some way or another, that they need their own support and they need their own help. In a way, they need their own recovery.
Yes.
It might not be recovery from the substance, but it might be recovery from a loved one's substance. And I really, really appreciated the work by Michael Barnes, who he was a guest on my podcast, and we talked about, he wrote a book called When the Solution Becomes a Problem.
Yes.
When you just try to fix things and it creates more problems. And it comes from a very family systems dynamic. But he really dives deep in his book about how you can see the trauma that happens in family systems. Because all of a sudden, like when they're not home by curfew, what happens to the family? What do they start to experience? And he really dives into like the trauma response of like they feel their hands get tightened or their heart races because now it's a minute past curfew. How the phone would ring and they would worry that it's a police officer telling them they found someone dead. That or if they tried to set boundaries, if they tried to not give money or not bail someone out, that if there was a challenge to that, what would they be experiencing? So he really talks about how the system goes through a lot of trauma and how that impacts all of it. And when I talk with some people about that and what they've experienced, I just try to highlight what it's been like for them. And it's one of the greatest questions I like in therapy, which is like, what's it like to be you?
Yes.
And what is that like when you say no to giving money and then that happens? What's it like for you when you set a curfew and they're 10 minutes late? I'm trying to get them to like recognize, bring some awareness to how do they feel. And part of that is they need some help in dealing with that. They need some healing themselves because this is very much a trauma response.
Yes.
So I used to think, my 19, 20, 21-year-old self, that if things got better with the person who was using substances or gambling or whatever the case, even mental health, if things were improved, okay, now the family would be better. But after all these years, you just realize that there's no guarantee of it.
Sometimes when the person with the active addiction moves towards sobriety, it makes things worse in the relationships around them.
Yeah.
The system has been accustomed to the drama, whatever it is. Now it's different.
We hope you enjoyed that episode. Be sure to tune in for next week's last and final episode with our interview with AJ Schreier. It's going to be part 4. And then that following Friday, after that 4th part is released, we will release the episode in its entirety on Full Episode Friday. But we thank you for joining us and embracing New Life, and we hope you're enjoying these episodes where we're diving into the staff at New Life Resources and getting to know them better. Have a great week. See you soon. Embracing New Life is a production of New Life Resources, a Christian counseling clinic in Southeast Wisconsin, whose aim and goal since 1976 has been to provide high-quality professional counseling, psychological, and consulting services from within a Christian framework.